Pastor Bree. On Sunday morning, we focused on the story of Moses and the burning bush from Exodus chapter 3. I had mentioned in service that this story was special to me because God had actually used that scripture to call me into ministry. So I thought I would share a little bit of my story with you. Growing up, I was very shy. In fact, when I would stand in front of people and I had to do a presentation for school, my whole body would start to shake and I would stutter over my words. It was just too much for me to speak in front of people. So the thought of being in ministry, despite my dad being a pastor, was terrifying to me. In fact, when people would assume that I was going to follow in my father's footsteps and then in my brother's footsteps because he was also a pastor, I would just laugh at them because there was no way I was going to be a pastor. I was too scared to talk to people and I was too shy to be a pastor and preaching in front of everyone. One day when I was in 8th grade, and this is going to sound very silly, but I remember it specifically because I was straightening my hair, I was getting ready, I was probably listening to Relient K, maybe the Backstreet Boys, but since God was talking to me during that time, I'm gonna say it was a Christian band, Relient K. I remembered having this feeling of, I really like to help people, and I love talking to people, I love helping people solve their problems. Maybe I should be a pastor. In fact, I even thought maybe I should be a youth pastor. Well, of course, I brushed that quickly off to the side because there was no way I was going to be able to preach in front of people every Sunday. Now, youth pastors, they obviously don't preach in front of a lot of people every Sunday, but on Wednesday nights they did. So I began to think, well, maybe that could be a possibility. However, as I got older and I watched my brother go into school for ministry and I experienced a little bit more hardships with my parents growing up in the church, I just realized that this was not meant for me. So I quickly took that off to the side and started looking into other avenues that I could do for a job. I was looking into education so I could help teach people. I even wanted to be a radio DJ because I loved music so much, but I was for sure never going to be in ministry. In junior year of high school, I went to teen camp. And I'm not going to bash teen camp, but we all know that you can get emotional highs from these experiences like mission trips and teen camps. And so I went into it knowing that there could be a possibility that it could be life-changing for me, especially now that I'm a junior in high school. My brother had already experienced a call into ministry, and I had watched as my dad had sat down with my brother and overanalyzed everything with him, made sure that my brother was truly called into ministry and not just going off of a gut feeling or just off of what my dad had done for his life. So I remember one night, it was the Thursday night, right? The very emotionally charged night where everyone usually walked away thinking that they were gonna go be a missionary in Africa. And I remember being very tired and just kind of over the camp thing. So as the guy gets up there and he begins reading Moses and the burning bush, I thought, well, I guess I can snooze through this one, right? Because I've heard this story a million times and it's probably gonna be about a calling because that's what we do with these things. I was already turning off because I knew that I wasn't going to be called into ministry and I wasn't going to fall for it this time. The speaker, as I mentioned in service, challenged those of us that knew this story before to close our eyes and to imagine ourselves in Moses' shoes, or since Moses had to take off his shoes, his feet, right? As the pastor began reading the story of Exodus 3, I closed my eyes and I really started to imagine what it was like to stand there and see this bush burning up and hearing God call out to me. Whenever the pastor finished reading his scripture, I tried to open my eyes, but it was almost like I couldn't, and I could hear God speaking to me again. But this time it wasn't me as Moses. God was really speaking to me as Brianna. God was asking me the question, who are you and when are you going to accept the person that I am calling you to be? Because you see, for the longest time, I had fallen for the narrative that I really was a shy person, that I wasn't good enough to stand up in front of people and tell them what God had to say. I was too insecure to realize that God was calling me to be a pastor and that I could learn to speak in front of other people. And I remember that for the longest time, I fought against going to Mid-American Nazarene University, MNU, because my brother had gone there and there was other people that had went there. And I didn't want to go just because everyone else had gone there as well, or it was the easiest place to go to. So not only was I running from the actual place that God was calling me to, but I was also running from my call into ministry. So I remember arguing back and forth with God, and I began to tell him, similar to what Moses had said, who am I? I'm not good enough, God. I can't do this. And God reminding me of who he is and who he's called me to be. Looking back now, I have learned and seen God's work in my life, and I have seen how he has changed me into the person he created me to be. It's not that I woke up one day and became this marvelous preacher or this person that you see right now. It took some hard work and it took some time. And God never called me to be something that I felt fully uncomfortable being. Of course, it was a little rough sometimes, right? And we have to do some uncomfortable things to get comfortable. But I never felt like I was being fake. I never felt like God's calling me to be this person that I'm really not supposed to be. But I learned that God was calling me to be uncomfortable so that I could rely on him a little bit more. God created me to be a pastor, and I didn't see it right away. But as he began to chisel away at me, to challenge me to do things that I had never done before, to challenge my mind to see myself in a different way than I had ever before, it felt so good to finally be the person that God created me to be. My challenge for you today is that if God is really calling you to do, to be, or to listen, whatever it is that God is calling you, are you going to follow his call? And if it's something that you're hesitant about, then what is it that is holding you back? Are you holding yourself back because you feel like you're not good enough, like Moses and myself? Is it something that you don't quite understand about God, that maybe if you took this step, you would see a different side of God that you've never seen before, that was more marvelous and glorious than you've ever imagined before? God is calling each and every one of us to rely on him more and more every day. Sometimes it's ourselves holding us back. Sometimes it's people in our own lives holding us back. Sometimes we feel like situations have to change and it has to be different for it to just be just right for us to follow God's call. What is holding you back from following God's call? And what could change, what could be for the better if you decided to take that step today?